This week on the WriterCon podcast.
Pick a time, one time a day, get yourself a routine. He didn't care if it was 3 a.m., 8 p.m., 5 a.m., which ended up being my time. Choose a number of hours you're going to write and do it every single day.
Welcome to WriterCon, a gathering place for writers to share their knowledge about writing and the writing world. Your hosts are William Bernhardt, best-selling novelist and author of the Red Sneaker books on writing, and Lara Bernhardt, award-winning author of the Wantland Files book series.
Thank you, Jesse Ulrich. And ho, 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 writers. Thanks for joining us for another episode of this podcast. I know you're busy. Christmas is just right around the corner. Hanukkah is just right around the corner. And we very much appreciate you carving out time for this podcast. Just don't get so busy you forget to write every day or as often as possible. We here at the podcast are going to take a holiday hiatus until January, but we'll be back with more episodes after this one in 2025. But since we won't be around on the 1st, I thought this is the time to talk about not only the December holidays, but New Year's as well. Lara, have you got any book-related resolutions planned for 2025?
Yes, my resolution for next year is to find more time to write my own books. I have been very blessed with being able to work with a lot of really talented authors this year, which brings me great satisfaction, lots of joy in and of itself when I'm working with someone to edit their book and help bring that into the world. But my time is limited, and so what's happened is I did finish a book, and it's out on submission right now, but I would have liked to have had more writing of my own done as well. So that's my plan for next year.
Sounds like a good one.
Find a little bit better balance, maybe. Keep helping others, but also allow more time for myself.
Perfection. That should be everyone's resolution. Jesse, no pressure, but what are you going to do differently next year?
Well, I'm hoping I can continue the momentum that I actually started this week, which is focusing on myself first and then getting my life in order so I can then better help others going forward. So, self-help, not taking on too many things.
Well, they do always tell you on the airplane, put the air mask on yourself first.
Yes.
Then take care of other people. Right?
It makes so much sense, but it really is a tough balance to find because I do enjoy all the projects that come to me, and it can be very difficult to find enough time for yourself too. I get it. Right. I get it.
Getting your life in order enough to then be able to spend the time that you want on the creative things that you enjoy doing. That is my goal for 2025.
That's a good work-life balance. But first, the news. In today's news segment, we're going to discuss 3 new publishing platforms and some that may surprise you. Maybe not the first one, because news story number 1 is about Taylor Swift, and who could be surprised by anything she did at this point? Well, she's going to publish her first book, and guess what? She's self-publishing it. So next time you hear someone making, negative remarks about people who self-publish, you can bring up not only J.K. Rowling, not only James Patterson to some extent, but also now Taylor Swift, because her first book, Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour book, is going to be published and distributed by, you guessed it, Taylor Swift. It's going to be self-published under a new imprint she's creating, Taylor Swift Publications. So this billionaire singer, now prose writer, I should say, she's always written her songs, but she's bypassing traditional publishers and distributing entirely and releasing it exclusively with Target. course. If I could get an exclusive deal with Target, I'd listen. But at any rate, celebrity titles every year bring millions of dollars to traditional publishing. It's one of the most reliable kinds of books they publish. So this is a big deal and could be the start of even a bigger deal, even though I don't know why it would be surprising. That's how she's always done. She's always been entrepreneurial, run her own show, and she clearly has the fan base to support it. But it is making people wonder if this is the start of something new or just the next step in the diminishing influence of the big five publishers. I don't know. Lara, what do you think? Is this good for publishing or bad?
Publishing meaning the big traditional publishers?
Sure, go that way.
I'm sure that they think this is very bad. They would have loved to have had Taylor Swift's book to bring out to the world. So yeah, it's not good for them. But I think that we're going to continue to see publishing move in this direction, where more people who have the fan base can just bring their own books out and cut out the need for that middle person. And that's unfortunate because you're talking about those celebrity books that's turned into, I think, a little more their bread and butter. They've got their backlist and their celebrity books, but I think maybe that wasn't necessarily the best way for them to go. They stopped trying to develop new authors and bring out new talent, and we went elsewhere.
Yeah, well, and it certainly makes self-publishing a viable alternative. Although, is this really different from people like Hugh Howey, who, would let the big five publish his print books but kept the ebook rights? Or J.K. Rowling, I mentioned before, she recovered the ebook rights so she could sell them herself because that just makes sense.
This does seem like another step forward to me because Taylor Swift went completely around them. Completely. And she has the ability to approach Target and say, hey, I'll release it here with you guys if you will have them in your store.
Yeah, and who wouldn't have said, I bet Target was all over that.
Target did probably didn't let her finish the sentence. They were just like, yes, yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Taylor
whatever
Swift,
you say.
yes.
Taylor Swift's calling. Say yes, whatever it is.
Exactly. So she's in an enviable position. I mean, it's not a business model that will work for the vast majority of us, but I'm thrilled for her.
Well, not yet, but isn't that how it always starts? When we have these paradigm shifts in any industry, there's got to be somebody who blazes the trail, and it's got to be somebody with some clout, like Rowling or Taylor Swift. Jesse, I know you've got a thing about James Patterson, but I'm not sure how you feel about someone who might actually even be more wealthy and more famous. No. Are you a secret Swiftie?
I'm not a secret Swiftie. I mean, again, how can you have a heart and a soul and not, one, enjoy her music, and two, enjoy her success? Like, good for her. I'm happy for her. I'm happy that she's starting her own publishing arm. Again, I feel like more competition allows for more authors getting their books out there. And, just like with Oprah's book club, if this is another way for new authors to get a bump because Taylor Swift's like, I want to publish your book, that feels like good and a good addition to our system that we currently have.
Well, we talk about the big five. If I'm not sure this is her groove, but if she wanted to expand this imprint and publish more books, she could be the sixth entry in the big five overnight, I suspect. And speaking of other people doing similar things, remember former NFL player Colin Kaepernick, who started his own publishing company 4 years ago, mostly focusing on comic books, graphic novels, and now he's launched something called Lumi, that's Lumi, which is going to be a self-publishing platform for people writing comic books and graphic novels. He's already raised $4 million for that. And that, of course, leads us to my official news story number 2, which is about another publishing venture, this one coming from TikTok. Because ByteDance, the Chinese tech giant company that owns TikTok. They've already been publishing digital books, but now they've got a print imprint they call Eighth Note Press. And they're going to focus on, of course, the genres that would appeal to the TikTok audience most, meaning romance, romantasy, and young adult fiction. Obviously targeting younger readers and book talk influencers and the people who have made Colleen Hoover and a lot of other writers huge. So, Lara, as we've been saying, I like it when authors have alternatives. I'm always pro-author. But at some point, I mean, if TikTok becomes the big six or Taylor Swift becomes seven, I mean, one of the main reasons people go to traditional publishers is to get their books in bookstores. These TikTok books are probably never going to show up in Barnes & Noble unless they become incredibly popular. But clearly they think they can reach their audience another way, meaning through their app. Is this a good trend for publishing?
Well, maybe not for bookstores if we're talking about fewer and fewer books going to the bookstores. But we continue to see things change. Mm-hmm. And I wouldn't be surprised if eventually maybe they could start putting those books in bookstores. I mean, yeah, TikTok grew up Colleen Hoover, and her books are everywhere. We saw her books in Egypt. We saw they're literally everywhere. So in that regard, it could be considered good for them, but not if everyone keeps going around. But again, maybe we're gonna see a little shift in the business and how it works and how those books wind up in those bookstores.
Right. It seems like there's a difference, though, between, book talk influencers saying, go buy this book by Colleen Hoover at your bookstore, and TikTok now starting their own imprint, Eighth Note Press, which, might get in books. You're not going to see Barnes & Noble offering anything that was published by Amazon, right? That's never happened. That never will happen. I don't know if they'll be similarly hostile to TikTok or not. So I should ask you, Jesse, because you are a complete TikTok addict, I know. And
love taking your
what?
I said, love the TikTok. Again, TikTok probably the most distracting thing I could ever do.
Really? So,
yeah. Oh yeah, just instant videos. Like it's bad. Mm-hmm.
For me. I was just kidding, but okay. Well, would you buy a TikTok published book?
Yeah, I mean, if it's a book I'm interested in, I don't care who publishes it.
And there
I just
we
care
go.
if I can read it.
That's the thing a lot of people who are in our world don't realize, because, we're all, I got this publisher or that publisher. But most people buying books, especially online, they notice the author's name, they read the book description, they don't notice who published it, they don't care who published it.
No, why would any reader care?
Yeah, that prestige factor is rapidly disappearing.
I think more importantly, we as authors used to believe that coveted book deal with a larger publisher would result in greater sales, higher visibility. Getting into the bookstores meant more. But we talked about a couple of episodes ago, we talked about where the majority of sales are coming from. And so many of the sales are coming from digital versions of books now. So it's growing. It's a smaller and smaller revenue source, and I think it's not going to. Maybe the TikTok publish, the Taylor Swift publish, these other publishers can start to get you more of that visibility. Those might become the more coveted book publishers as we move forward, because they're going to result in what we're really after, which is more visibility and more book sales.
Right. So here's the takeaway for you writers out there. The book world is changing. All the ideas, predispositions, prejudices you may have formed 40 years ago, or 20, or even 10. We do not live in that world anymore. The publishing world has changed, It will continue to change, and you need to stay on top of what's going on so you can change with it when appropriate, so you can get your books out there, okay? Well, today in Craft Corner, we have Desiree Duffy, a longtime friend of this podcast. She of course runs Black Chateau and Books That Make You. She is the go-to expert on the subject of book marketing. And since we're rapidly approaching the new year, she's going to offer some tips on marketing your book in the coming year, in the new year. Take it away, Desiree.
Craft Corner.
The new year is a pivotal time for books, readers, and writers because our focus shifts to what's coming next. And in times of dramatic change, we often also look for sources of comfort, escape, and knowledge. That's where books come in this 2025, maybe more so than ever. Every new year has folks stocking their reading list or their to-be-read list. Want to see what people are putting on theirs? Search TBR as a hashtag and see what's trending on various social media platforms. This means you're using the TBR hashtag to do a bit of your own market research. What books are trending in genres like yours? Notice any trends that you can take advantage of in the new year? Are there other authors who are similar that you can position yourself with? Then, use the TBR hashtag in your own campaigns. If you are releasing a book in 2025, use hashtag TBR and hashtag TBR 2025 to jump on the hashtag bandwagon. Then consider writing blog content and posting it to your own website with your TBR recommendations for readers who enjoy your book's genre or similar subject matter. Posts like this, often called listicles, are a favorite among the reading communities. And as a marketer, I know listicles can have far-reaching and even viral results. Example, let me break this down for you. If you happen to have a new novel coming out, let's say it's a dystopian and it's releasing in 2025, list several popular other dystopian novels that are also coming out. Add in some from similar authors or from your friends, associates, other writers that you might know from WriterCon or your writing group. And for good measure, throw in a classic or two. Then use that blog post as part of your content strategy and post it several times between December and even into late January. Remember, use the hashtags. And pro tip, many readers who create a TBR do so far in advance. Try and hit them while they're planning theirs in late 2024. Post the blog with your listicle with all those other books. Post it on social media several times. And if you have author friends in this list, ask them to do the same. Together, you're stronger. And you can also boost or advertise it on Meta or on other advertising platforms that you may use, and put the listicle in your email newsletter or Substack. However you reach your fan base, shout out your TBR 2025. I'm Desiree Duffy, founder of Black Chateau, the Book Fest, and Books That Make You. We promote a lot of books using listicles like this in the new year and throughout. Ever need a hand in your book promotion? Don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you to William, Lara, Jesse, and the whole WriterCon podcast team for inviting me to share during this Craft Corner.
DC Frost, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
Okay, I'm going to call you Denise from now on. Is that okay? 'Cause
That is good.
calling somebody DC, it's just like you don't know them very well. Plus, to me, DC means comic books. And we don't want to get off on the wrong tangent. I mean, I'm actually wearing this right now.
I have a comic book character in my book, and my name is actually, yes, I do. And my name is Denise Cecilia, but that always sounds like when my mom would call me and get mad at me. So
I get that.
All right. Well, we have a traditional first question. If you could offer writers one piece of advice, what would it be?
I'm going to tell you what my therapist told me during the pandemic.
This is the first, okay.
Yes. Well, I actually had a very dear friend who had cancer, and I did listen to a therapist, or I actually worked with therapists for a long time. And one of the things he told me when I said I'm having trouble writing, and he was absolutely right, pick a time, one time a day, get yourself a routine. He didn't care if it was 3 a.m., 8 p.m., 5 a.m., which ended up being my time. Choose a number of hours you're going to write and do it every single day. And your muse will show up if you're there. And it's true. I started writing. I was probably about 3/4 of the way through the book, which I'd been for many, many months. And that really propelled the book forward, helped me rewrite it, helped me finish it. It was just everything. And it also just gives you a routine and a rhythm. And if you show up, your writing will show up.
Yeah,
Great
I think
advice.
that's terrific advice. All right, we're going to talk about your new first book. But before you got to this point, you had other jobs. And in fact, you did a lot of work for nonprofits, right?
I did. I worked for many years for public television, a local station, KCET
great.
in Los Angeles, which doesn't really exist anymore. And I also worked for I actually worked for PBS. We had a group, a sponsorship group. So that was very exciting. And I worked for Variety for a short period of time before I worked at a small it was eye-opening. And then I worked for a small liberal arts college in Los Angeles.
Did you write for Variety? Were you interviewing celebs or anything cool?
I was actually working. No, I wasn't doing anything cool. I was actually working in.
It's a cool job. It's cool.
It's
so
cool. I was
cool,
working
yeah.
in marketing, but actually how places like Variety at that time made their money was to focus on a producer, a star, a director, and you would do a special on them, meaning that there would be a story on them. And of course, you would sort of leverage all their friends and their working colleagues to honor them by taking out an ad. And so that's what I did. And I have to say, I expected the writers to be all like wonderful and happy. And I thought, this is going to be so exciting. I'm going to meet all these writers. But in Hollywood, it kind of works a little bit differently. It's not so much fun working for, I think, an entertainment magazine and then working with the studios. It's a pretty tough job, actually. And you're still reporting news. So I had a real eye-opening experience doing that, but it was exciting.
How did you get interested in writing? Because it sounds like you already had enough to do, really.
Ever since I've been a kid, I've written. I would watch TV shows and write scripts. And then when I was learning the guitar, when I was about 12, I learned by writing songs. That's the way I learned. And so I started writing short stories, and I've had about 4 or 5 literary stories published in journals around the United States. Had a mentor. So I've always written. It's been really important to me. But I loved mysteries when I was I started with Nancy Drew and worked up to Agatha Christie in high school. And then during the pandemic, I reread every Agatha Christie. And I like to see the world. I think first the world is mysterious, and I like to see the world through mysteries, and I like to explore regions. When I go to a different area, I like to pick up something by a local author because you get the sense of a place and how it is to live there. And somebody gets murdered, but what can you say?
It is a mystery after all.
Yeah, it's a mystery.
So that brings us to this great, wonderful new book, your first book.
Yes.
It's called A Punishing Breed. Tell us about it.
So it takes place on a small liberal arts campus in the heart of Los Angeles, and it explores just the kind of a melting pot of what Los Angeles is, but also what a small liberal arts college is, particularly a residential campus where you've got the trustees who I think are sort of the overseers of this world. You've got the faculty who are, I'm not going to say they're indentured servants, but they're indentured in some ways because they tend to spend their career there. So their connection to that institution is much different than the people who are passing through, the staff. And then you've got the students who are there for 4 years and want to make their mark, and a lot of protests, a lot of a lot of like learning and trying to really discover themselves. So it's just a very interesting sort of like environment that I think you can introduce a lot of themes and thoughts into. So there's a character who obviously is killed, but it also explores what it really means to belong to a place and how you actually negotiate that and discover yourself through being in a particular place that's really, I think, focused on self-discovery and learning.
Well, I can't help but notice you mentioned working at a small liberal arts college, and now you're describing the setting in your book as being one. Did you kind of infuse the story with some of your actual experiences, or was this just kind of something you're familiar with and decided it was a good place to place a story?
I think I more just felt it was a place that I could place. It was a setting I could place the story. And really the characters there are an amalgam of different people I've met throughout my career. And I think that when you're younger and you want to work at nonprofits, you think it's going to be a completely different experience than working at a for-profit. And I think it's really not. I think human beings are human beings. Mm-hmm. And I think there's that quote. I think that people say it's by Henry Kissinger, but I think it's about something else, about you're in this small liberal arts college and it's just as vicious as anywhere else. But what is it? It's that, but that the challenges are there, but what it's worth is very small. That's what he was trying to say. Right. It doesn't really matter. Yeah.
Academic politics are the worst because the stakes are so low.
Exactly. That's it. So I thought that was fascinating. I think that's a fascinating thing because it doesn't really matter where you are. You're still dealing with human beings who are, some are good, some are not, some are, thoughtful, some are not. So I just used that. But I think really a lot of characters came from people I've known throughout the years. And also being Latino, half Latino, I really wanted to explore what it feels like to be sort of connected to your culture, but to be 2 or 3 generations away from it. And so you're always trying to figure out like how that plays into your thoughts and your life. And you've got your grandparents who are close to who maybe from, Mexico, but you're not. And so how does that really work, in your life? And how does that influence you?
And speaking of characters, tell us about your protagonist.
So DJ Arias is my protagonist, and he is not particularly a very happy-go-lucky guy. In fact, a lot of people think he is a terrible person. But he does have an arc. I think by the end of the book, he does change a little. And I really wanted to write a character that was male because I think a lot of men write characters that are women. And I wanted to really explore what that felt like to be a woman writing a male character. And I wanted the women in my story to be protagonists and to be smart. I really sometimes bristle at mysteries that are for women where women can't really see that the person they're with is like a jerk, controlling, and all these things. Yes, and all these friends and everybody telling this person, hey,
and they're
this
just
person
blind to it.
Yeah, they're blind to it. So I really wanted to turn it on its head and maybe have the male character be that, but also be someone who has to learn lessons maybe over and over again, like we all do.
Yeah.
I like it. That's good. So what does a typical writing day look like for you? You mentioned your muse comes at 5 a.m. So can you talk to us about your process a little bit? I'm a night owl. And so every time I hear someone say that they're a 5 a.m. writer, I just cringe a little bit. But please share your process with us.
Well, it's not so hard because my husband he's a reporter, so he gets up about 4:30. So we're kind of an early rise house, and I've always been a morning person. So I get up about 5 o'clock. I go into my office. I write for at least 2 hours, but if things are good, it'll go longer than that, maybe 3 hours. And I've just recently retired, so I am extending that time. And then I tootle around, and then I rewrite. And I'm just actually getting used to not having a day job, so that's been very interesting.
Congratulations.
Thank you. It's been It's been really an interesting transition. I'm still trying to get to normalize it. I've had some family issues here with some health with my mom. So we're trying to get into a routine. But I really do believe that showing up for your writing is so important. And to me, if I can write, I feel like my life has more meaning and it's more elevated just because I understand things better when I sort of write them. And I find that being a writer and both of you, I think maybe we all have that same experience where we write something and we go back and look at it a year later and think, oh, I've discovered something and I had discovered it, but I didn't realize it was through my writing. And so I think that, exploring, I think we work out a lot of issues in our writing that maybe aren't so conscious, but we realize later that that's what we're doing.
Right.
It's a fair point. And I know I get very restless and anxious and can't be still when I'm not writing, when I'm not allowing that process to come through for me. I get very uncomfortable. So I do think as writers, we need to be writing or we just will not be satisfied.
I think that's true. Yeah.
Here's a question I always ask everyone. Are you a pantser or a planner? And do you know what I mean by pantser? Do you write by the seat of your pants or do you kind of start with an outline and then move forward from there?
I'm a pantser. So
Okay.
I started writing literary fiction and I had a mentor and he really believed that it's in you write and the answer will come as you work through your story. And then when I did start writing a novel, I thought, well, that's crazy because suddenly you're in the middle of, 100 pages and you're like, where's this going? But it's very interesting. I don't know. I'm sure you've read this. I know you all have read this book by Stephen King on writing. And I had read all these books. You should outline, you shouldn't outline. And I just did not want to outline. And I read the Stephen King book and I really liked what he said. He said it's like flying on a trapeze and and if you don't let yourself fly, you won't discover these things that are out there in the air. And I love that sort of analogy of just like discovering things. And I do think he's right. I think that you realize that suddenly you're writing chapter 30 and you realize, oh, that it directly correlates back to chapter 2 where you had this symbolic sort of thing in there. And I feel like that does happen. And in a way, your first draft becomes your outline. And when you go back, like when I'm when I'm 3/4 of the way through, which I did in my first book and I'm doing now in my second book, I'm rewriting it. And I realize in a lot of ways that is your outline. You cut a lot of stuff away, but that wouldn't have been there, I think, if I had planned it all out. But I think you just have to do what's best for you, what you really feel comfortable with and what you really, what makes you feel like you are really getting to the truth of the story.
I think that's the most important thing. When people tell me that they just absolutely can't outline, I say, well, then don't. Because if it hinders you from writing at all, then it's not a good tool. So I think it's important to find where you fall on that spectrum and work within it. Just like when you write, you have to find what works for you and go that way, that route.
I think what you said is really important. I'm sorry.
Go.
I think this is so important because I hear people say this, I think you just write because, and you're right, don't let anything stop you from writing. And that's why I think it's so important to have an appointment with yourself. You can always go back and you can rewrite it, or you can say, this will lead you to somewhere else. And maybe that first page you wrote will disappear. Sure. But so many people say they want to write and they just become paralyzed by actually sitting and
great
writing
word for it. Yes. Yeah. I had someone at a conference once come up to me after having just listened to someone say that you have to get up at 5 a.m, which works great for you, huzzah. But he came up and said, I can't get up that early, so I guess I can't be a writer. And I was like, that's the wrong message to take from this. When can you write? Just find that time and make it for yourself.
Absolutely. Well, my best friend's a late night person. So I think it's whenever you have that ability to concentrate and do whatever you need to do. That's all.
Yeah. All right. One last question, Denise. What's next? I'm guessing this is the first book in a series, right?
It is. So the next
So we'll
book,
see more.
Yeah. So DJ Arias is coming back, and I've set the beginning in Mexico City because we have family there, and I find that city to be fascinating. And then it also moves into more what the entertainment industry is in Los Angeles and California, because it is an industry and it's a hardworking one. And I think you see a lot of times Los Angeles portrayed as a glitzy place when really it's a pretty hardworking place. My son works for a director, and he works 14, 15 hours a day. It's not, it's not like drug-addled movie stars running around. I mean, maybe part of that is, but there's a lot of very hardworking people that, and this is a very big industry. And I feel that California and Los Angeles is sometimes portrayed in a way that makes it seem not as hardworking and not as creative and not as industrious as it really is. So that's one of the things I really would like to change.
Good. Well, we will anxiously await the release of that second book. Maybe we can get you back to talk about that. Denise, thanks so much for being on the podcast. Just a few parting words. First of all, let me remind you that your hosts have written Christmas books, and when would be a better time to read them than right now? I wrote that book hovering over my shoulder the midnight before Christmas a few years ago, but I got to tell you, it's still one of my favorites. If you choose to read it and you're wondering where did he get this wacky idea for the ceramic Cupid dolls, that's what my grandmother Bernhardt used to give me every year for Christmas. There's also Christmas Tapestry, an anthology of tales, including one by me, authors writing Christmas stories involving their series characters. And Lara's fifth book in the Wantland Files series, right? That's Christmas Spirit, isn't it?
Yep. Seventh book, but fifth in that series. Absolutely correct.
Right. And while you're in the Christmas period, remember what Jesse was saying earlier. Don't get so wrapped up in the shopping and the hustle and the bustle that you forget to take time for yourself and your family and the things that actually matter most, including your writing. Write every day if you can. Even Stephen King claims he takes off Christmas. But remember the things that are most important to you and your heart as well. All right? Until next time, keep writing, and remember, you cannot fail if you refuse to quit. Merry Christmas, everybody. See you next year.